What up, YouTube? APFC back again. Wow, what a game, what an outcome. The Chelsea Arsenal game, simply incredible, the character that we showed. To be honest, I'm buzzing. I mean, it wasn't the. There was parts of the game that really disappointed me, in particular in the first half before the red card. But the way that we showed character and fight, and we're happy to play on the counter, and we handled the fact that we weren't holding much of the possession, showed there were some real positive signs ahead under the Arteta new era. But a big question under the Arteta era is, where does Mesut Ozil fit in Arteta's plans? Mesut Ozil has been taken off 5 games out of 7. So meaning he's only completed 90 minutes twice in Arteta's 7 games that he's had as manager. From memory, the games that he completed 90 minutes was Man United and Sheffield last week, where he also completed 90 minutes as well. And yeah, I'm wondering exactly where he fits in, because obviously Arteta coming in, he sees Ozil, who undoubtedly in his peak was one of the best playmakers in world football at the time. Don't get it twisted, he's not one of the best playmakers of all time. A lot of his fanboys will tell me otherwise, but what stopped him from hitting that level is his lack of consistency. And going back to what I was saying, with Arteta coming in, he sees a player of Ozil's caliber and what he's achieved in the past, what he's done in the past in regards to ability, and what he's won with Germany, and even what he's won with Arsenal in some respects with FA Cups. You hear things, I'm going to get the best out of this player. And let's be real, any manager that would come into this situation would say exactly the same. They would say, okay, Emery didn't get the best under Ozil. Towards the end, Wenger wasn't getting the best out of Ozil. This is my chance, this is my opportunity to be able to get the best out of him. You know, before joining Arsenal, Arteta would have had his ideas and plans about playing around him. I honestly thought Arteta was looking to build the team around Ozil, and you know, he probably saw Ozil as a player that, you know, although he hasn't been in the best form, he still offers those abilities to be able to make a real difference to the side. Let's be real, he's not making any difference since Arteta's been in. He's got 1 assist all season. And a lot of people will, it's an unpopular opinion, and a lot of people will disregard this, but his time at Arsenal has been up for well over a season now. And what really struck a chord with me today is, I think initially he planned to bring Pepe or Martinelli on the pitch, and you know, he eventually waited and see how things went, which pretty much changed the game, because if he kept Ozil on, we would have lost 3 or 4-0. If you noticed, when David Luiz got sent off, Granit Xhaka dropped to centre back. By the way, did a fantastic job there, and Ozil sort of dropped to a centre midfield role. And to be honest, I was embarrassed at times. And I don't want to be too negative about the game, because it was a very good result. But I was embarrassed that a player as such a high caliber as Ozil, for a player that's been at Arsenal for a good period of time, just puts in absolutely no defensive effort whatsoever. This guy's playing at centre mid, and he is a passenger, an absolute passenger. Do you have Torreira, the complete opposite player of Ozil? All about effort, all about tenacity. Don't get me wrong, Torreira has a lot of footballing ability, but he has nowhere near the ability that Ozil actually has. But the amount of effort that he puts in, the amount of ground that he covers, the tenacity in the pressing and the one-on-ones, he gives no player any room. Kovacic is no spring chicken. Kovacic is not quick, and he was overrunning Ozil like he wasn't even there. And to me, Ozil should have gone after the Europa League final last season, with the way that he carried on in the final when Willock came on for him. Everyone likes to talk about the Xhaka situation, but everyone seems to conveniently ignore what Ozil did that game, and the constant dummy spits that he's had since he's been at Arsenal. The one that I can remember was against Man City as well, when Freddie Ljungberg was interim. And this guy continuously gets a free pass from all the fans. And, you know, don't get me wrong, there's a few fans that have the same sort of perspective as me, but, you know, we're talking about Ozil and his lack of assist and goals. Oh, but he gets the pre-assist. he drops back and builds the play from the defence. And it's the way he moves the ball through the mid. There's so many other playmakers or centre attacking midfielders in the Premier League that can move the ball better than him, that can score more goals than him, that can offer more final products, and most importantly, from what I was saying before, offer your defensive duties, because Ozil is stuck in 2010 football. Football has changed. The attacking midfielder can no longer sit at the top and create. Okay, something that comes to mind was Wesley Sneijder. I think he said in an interview when Jose Mourinho was manager at Inter, very successful period for Inter, by the way. Wesley Sneijder said that Mourinho gave him the ability just to stay up there, ignore to some respects his defensive duties, and focus more on creating. That worked back then, and I think Inter won the Champions League final maybe around the 2010 sort of period. Unfortunately, I can't remember that off the top of my head. But what I'm trying to say is football has changed. You rarely see an attacking midfielder that just stays up there and ignores his defensive duties. Someone like Kevin De Bruyne comes to mind, where he offers so much, and I think Kevin De Bruyne is a better player than Ozil. And even at the end of De Bruyne's career, if you compare the peak of De Bruyne and Ozil, I still think De Bruyne is going to be the better player. Unpopular opinion for a lot of Arsenal fans, but for me, there's no question in regards to what both of them offer in comparison. But he runs a lot off the ball, and he's happy to close down and make that sort of effort, because these days football, a lot more, back then there was not as much pressing from the front. Now it's a common thing. Almost every team does it. Someone that comes to mind is Sheffield. Sheffield United have come up, and they have had absolutely no fear for a team on paper with very limited ability, no disrespect, but now they're in the top 10 in the Premier League. I think they're in the top 8. So basically what I'm trying to say, it's changed, and Ozil has not changed with the times. And your team's to 10 men, and he just doesn't look like, he just thinks it's below him, the defensive work and the defensive duties, and I've got no time for that, and I've got no time for, not putting your body on your line for your teammates, particularly when you have some teammates, like, everyone's giving a lot of criticism to Granit Xhaka over the last few months, and myself included, but this guy, he comes back after his tantrum, he puts in 7 to 8 out of 10 performances, and then today, when our back's against the wall, he slots into centre back and puts an 8 to 9 out of 10. It's not his position, and he does it without complaining. Ozil was an absolute passenger, and thank the heavens that Arteta saw what we were seeing and ended up taking him off. I think it was just before the 60th minute. But it's 5 and 7 games now that Ozil has not played the 90 minutes. And this is what's making me start to wonder, is Arteta losing patience with Ozil? But from my perspective, it's a yes. I think he was planning on sort of, playing what we all wanted, a front three of Lacazette, Aubameyang, and Pepe. Well, now you'd probably want to throw Martinelli in the mix somewhere and have Ozil behind creating for him. This is the best forward line we have had at Arsenal since Ozil's been there. The excuses that fans made for Ozil before was, but Giroud's up front and he can't create for him because Giroud's not good enough, and all these excuses about the forwards that we had. And you got Aubameyang, who on average in Germany scored 20 plus a season. He did it in his first season in the Premier League. His Lacazette scores a lot of goals, although not at the moment. Pepe has so much talent, hasn't hit the heights, but this is by far the most attacking threat we've had at Arsenal. Maybe, ironically, in the last 10 years, because this is the worst that we've been since I've been alive, and I'm 26. So, yeah, in the last 10 years, it's the best attacking line that we've had. And Ozil, there's no excuse for him now, because that was the excuses before. Oh, we don't have the attacking players. They're all there now. And this is the thing that also worries me with Ozil now, is that we've all known about his defensive duties. We all know that Ozil doesn't fancy a game away from home. We all know Ozil doesn't fancy a scrap. But there were periods today where obviously we were more playing on the counter-attack when we went down to 10 men. The old Ozil would have found these through balls, particularly from the runs being made out wide, where I noticed Pepe and Martinelli were sort of making runs that they were starting out wide and sort of cutting in. And there was times where Ozil wasn't really getting pressed and he could have played that ball comfortably. But he just doesn't seem to have the confidence to be able to do it. He doesn't seem to have that ability anymore to be able to quickly find out that space and put the through ball through, because trust me, I watched again. There was many times he could have put it through, and he ends up sort of shimmies and goes back and then plays the simple pass. He's not looking for the risk pass. And that brings me to my point of, if that's the case, if he's not offering us that playmaker sort of role, if he's not offering those passes between the lines, if he's not offering those, through balls, which he was so notorious for at Real Madrid and in his best period at Arsenal, what is his value to the team? Because if it was a playmaker that, he can move the ball between the lines quite nicely, and he can build from the back, and then he can also sort of put in a defensive shift, maybe you could give him some leeway. But because he doesn't put in a defensive shift, and now that he's not finding those through balls and those killer passes, Mesut Ozil back in the day when he was out wide used to make these great little cutback passes as well. When do you ever see Ozil in those positions that he's able to look threatening or to offer a threat with another one of our players coming in the box or a through ball or whatnot? You never see that anymore. And I'm wondering if Arteta is now seeing that as well. I'm a big fan of maybe playing Lacazette at attacking midfield and having Aubameyang, Martinelli and Pepe. I'm not a football manager, but from what I've seen, that would be the way that I would go. Lacazette seems to have completely lost all his confidence in front of goal, but at the same time, he's not getting himself in those positions that he was even under Emery, which makes me think Arteta may have a different role for him. And if it's that sort of Firmino role, which I've done a previous video on, do check that out if you haven't checked it out, then I think Lacazette can do it, because he can hold his back to the defence. He can link up the play, he's quite quick, he can get out of tight spaces, he can do that role. Ozil, another thing that I noticed is he can't get out of tight spaces like he used to. He used to be able to shimmy past players, and it was very tricky. Not sort of one of those guys that pulls step overs, but those sort of quick little turns that allowed him to get out of pressure. He can't do that anymore. And I noticed there was times today where if he just shimmied past the first player and played the through ball through Pepe or Martinelli, we would have been through. But because not only is he not playing the through ball when he has space, but when he doesn't have space, he can't find it when he's getting pressured, because he doesn't have the pace and the ability to be able to do that now. And, obviously last season, Ozil, people were saying this about Ozil, but there were still times where you could truly see Ozil's quality. And this season, I've only really seen it in the first half against Chelsea and maybe the first 50 to 60 minutes of the Man United game. I saw it. I have not seen it any other time, and the fact that he just doesn't fancy defensive duties, and, his attitude is extremely poor. The way that he carried on with the whole Emery situation, his PR team comes out and says, he's working hard, blah, blah, blah. He's got no future for me, and I'm wondering if Arteta's starting to see the same thing. Only issue being we don't really have a readily replacement for him. He doesn't seem to want to put Ceballos on. He looks fit. He's been on the bench at least the last 4 to 5 games. Unless he wants to play Lacazette there, which we haven't really seen done under Emery, even Wenger or Arteta. So where does that leave us in a position of, if Ozil doesn't play, who comes in? Maybe that's a discussion point for another video. But I would personally probably put Lacazette there, because I think he does have those qualities, and right now he's sort of lacking that confidence in front of goal. I think playing attacking midfield would be a good position for him in terms of how well he can link up with our wingers, which I do see consistently, how well he links up with our midfielders when he has his body turned to goal, and, how he can link up with Aubameyang ultimately at the end of the day. I would like to see that happen, but only time will tell whether Arteta sees my viewpoint as well. But particularly with the whole thing of him playing at centre mid today, really struck a chord. Obviously, I've seen this so many times. I mentioned the Europa League. There's been so many other games this season that he's ghosted. He was dreadful against, not dreadful against Sheffield, but he was pretty average most of the game. He was pretty average against Crystal Palace. He was non-existent against Leeds. He only really put in good performances against Man United and against the other Chelsea game where we lost 2-1. And that's not good enough. You can't have a player on $350K a week, particularly because in my opinion, the reason why apparently we're only looking for loan players is that our wage bill is too high. And this is a problem that we had stemming from the previous regime when Gazidis was there and Wenger was there. We still have players from that period that are currently with us now that are on excessive wages, but obviously the main one being Ozil on 350k a week. We can't afford to have a passenger on the field. We can't afford to have a playmaker that no longer playmakes. Who was I going to say? Alisson has as many assists this season as Ozil. He has as many assists. He's got one. Ozil has one. I think it was Thibaut Courtois has one assist. Ozil has one assist. If you want me to start going into attacking midfielders, we'll be here all day because all of them have more assists than Ozil. All of them have more goals than Ozil. And, if Ozil worked hard and offer a threat pressing up front, maybe, but not even that, but maybe you could give him a bit more leeway. But because he doesn't even do that and he has a poor attitude defending, we had 10 men for crying out loud and he just lets Kovacic, he's not quick. Kovacic is not quick, run past him. And I think Arteta thankfully saw that danger and ultimately sorted it out and made the correct substitution and decided to take Ozil off, which in my opinion changed the game because Guendouzi came on and although his positional sense is not fantastic, he offered a lot more than Ozil would in terms of energy and attitude. And, there's always going to be some players in certain big teams that maybe don't have as much ability but have incredible attitude. Someone like Jordan Henderson comes to mind and, at first with Jordan Henderson, I didn't really rate him. Although now I actually very much so rate his ability. I think he's improved 3 to 4 times the amount he was before under Klopp. He's still sort of an example of one of those players. Gary Neville, when he was at United, was one of those players, not a great ability, but would always leave everything on that field. Ozil now doesn't seem to have the ability to create, and that's what I noticed mainly today. The 2 points is, first of all, obviously his defensive duties, non-existent when we had 10 men. We all know about that. We all know what he can be like defensively. But second of all, something that really struck the chord, as I said before, is that he's not playing those defense-splitting passes that he did. So essentially, where does he really fit it under Arteta? It will be interesting to see because it's been 5 out of 7 games that he has not played the 90 minutes. So, just wanted to do a quick video on that, guys. Please, if you watch my content, I really do appreciate it. Please give me feedback. As I said, I'm very new. It's only been about 2 weeks since I started doing videos. Any feedback about how I should title the videos or communication, please let me know. Please check out my video I did about the reaction, the Chelsea-Arsenal reaction I did. And keep your eyes tuned for more videos coming up. And this is APFC. Hope you enjoyed the video, guys, and have a fantastic day.